All right. All right. Well, happy Super Bowl day. Big national holiday that we got. Let's pray. Father, we come before you, Lord. Thankful that you've given us the last 3 weeks and today, Lord, the fourth week to go through this topic of God and race in the United States and see what the Bible says about these things. And Lord, I pray that if we weren't thinking in line with your scripture, that we would just say, I thought this way, the Bible says that. I need to rearrange my thoughts, my worldview to what you say. And Lord, I pray that each of us who sees things through our own tunnel vision, our own experiences, our own background, would be willing to not let the world tell us how to think about these things, but let you tell us how to think about these things, and to know that real solutions come from those who are willing to put aside their own methods, their own means, and to follow your ways, no matter how uncomfortable it may make us feel. I pray that today would go towards that work, towards your work in this world, in our hearts, in our lives. And we pray these things in the name that's above them all, the name of Jesus. And all of God's people said, amen. All right, so today we're going to talk about God and race. Oh, sorry. It's on. Today we're going to talk about God and race again. Last week, living in America. We're going to talk about living in America. Every time I hear that, I think of the Rocky with James Brown singing "Living in America." I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. It's one of the Rockies, and it just goes in my head. Living in America. The reason for the discomfort for these topics, and they're very uncomfortable. Let's face it, they are, right? I mean, you know, when we talk about these things on TV or Facebook, we tense up when we talk about these things, and we shouldn't, especially if our hearts are right. If we really want solutions, if we want to see things right, we shouldn't be uncomfortable. Even though others may be uncomfortable, we're out there to learn and to share, not just listen to others, but to share our experiences and our view of things. And maybe we can not just meet in the middle, we could see what's right and what's wrong, and what kind of truth or lies have we been fed our whole lives from our parents, from our schools, from TV. Who knows? The subject of race is inflammatory. We know that. It's been used by people of all skin tones to push forward their own political, their own social, their own financial agendas, and don't discount their financial agendas. What they call good politics, and they're worried about you socially, they're doing that for money. From both sides. They do it for money. They push their own agendas forward. And they push it through fear. That's what they want. They want you to be afraid of people of other races. And in this country especially, because we are probably the most diverse country in the world. So therefore, we have the most different subsets of skin tones in the world, in one country. And that's so easily to build into people's fears, because we do fear what we don't know. And then we hear from the TV all the time, and they build into that, and it causes our fear to grow. And if you have one experience or two that actually is in line with those fears, that could generate even more. The Bible says God is love. This is what the Bible says. What does that have to do with this? Well, the Bible also says fear has nothing to do with love. Fear is nothing to do with love. They're like oil and water. They don't mix. So if the country is putting forth fear as a way to live your life and to split the country up, and if God is love and fear has nothing to do with love, or i.e. fear has nothing to do with God, that means when they push fear as a way to promote their agendas, they're doing an anti-Christ move. They're working against the move of God, because God is love. He has nothing to do with fear at all. The fear of one another, the fear of each other, the fear of the unknown, that's not from God. We're sensitive. We're afraid to talk about these things. Yet God's agenda and his kingdom of love does not move forward one iota in this way. And the church is, let's face it, stoked as I am that we've got some, in the next 4 years, we're going to have a blip coming, a good blip in many different ways. Good blip for society. Good things that are going to happen now, because we have a new political power and control, which I believe is on more the right side than the wrong side. That doesn't mean after that we're not going to go right back and blip down, because let's face it, the overall trend in this nation is down. The overall trend of any nation from the beginning to the end of their curve is always downwards. Name me the nation that was around for 2,000 years that's on the upswing and powerful and doing great. No, they're not. They're not doing great. That's why Israel is such a crazy exception to be a country of power, then a country that was taken over twice, 3 times, then no country. And now a country, and doing great in science, doing great in agriculture, doing great in military. amazing. It is so amazing. It's impossible. You couldn't make it up if you studied the history of the world. But that's what God does when you follow. When God's got his people in his hands, he could do that. So I'm hoping that today we could just listen, open up to listen, and receive what it is I'm saying. And if you have any disagreements with that, I have no problem with that at all. Please engage me personally and privately. I'm big on that. I tell you the same thing about the finances of the church. Don't go to other people and talk about finances. Come to me if you have a question, because most likely you're going to put forth something that's not true anyway, because you're going to misinterpret, misread. Come to me first. If you don't like the answer, then you can tell whatever you want, because the answer is the answer. But just engage your mind, engage your heart, and see what God does. We're going to look, I think, today at who we really are in the United States, vis-a-vis what we call race relations. Personally, my personal story. I grew up in a very racially mixed area in Coney Island and Brooklyn. I grew up in Bayshore, Long Island for a short time in Lake Ronkonkoma, but really most of it, my formative years, was in Brooklyn, in Coney Island, which is very racially mixed. Matter of fact, probably more black than white when you go to my high school in Lincoln. But my area was, my particular tenement project was more white than black, but it's right there within blocks of everybody else. So I played baseball. And in Brooklyn, that's a big thing, meaning playing any sport, you learn how to play with, from a white perspective, you learn how to play with blacks and get along, because they're your teammates, or they're your the opposing teams, your enemies. And I hate my enemies, meaning I want to beat everybody, right? Because I don't care what sport it is. I'm on my team. So I used to always say, I slept with black boys when I was 15 and 16 years old. What do you mean you slept with black boys? Because when you travel to go to Vermont and New Hampshire, those with huge trips or somewhere like that, you slept in hotels and they put 2 or 3 kids to a bed. We didn't have money for our own individual room. Forget about that. Or a room with 2 beds for 2 kids. Yeah, right. We put at least 2 kids a bed. So that's just what you do. There was none of this like, I can't sleep with you, I can't, there was nothing going on, clearly. But that's just what you're in a community of people. So you learned growing up in Brooklyn like I did. I moved down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. If you look at my junior high school book, Olson Junior High School, it's way more black than white, because I lived in Hollywood, right across from Hollywood in Fort Lauderdale. But we had to take a long bus ride. It seemed like 100 miles. It was probably 4, 5, 6 miles. I don't know. It just seemed like forever. But most of the school was black. And so I learned how to live with black kids and white kids. You just did. What did I do? Everything I did was based on sports. That's who I was. Believe it or not, I was athletic at one time in my life. I moved to Long Island. And I lived for a little while in Bayshore, Long Island, where my grandmother's house. That was, again, a lot of black, very poor area in Long Island. Now today, Long Island is a whole different ballgame than it was in the '60s. It was more reasonable. The average person. It was a poor area. It was a rough area, tough area, black and white. So I lived there, and believe it or not, now I live in a great area in Canton, right? Cherry Hill Village, beautiful area. But that's the most racially diverse area I've ever lived in. Meaning, I lived in towns that had certain sections, right? Black section, white section, Spanish, Italian section. But Cherry Hill Village, at least in Canton, I think is let that way too. It's just black, Indian, white. I don't see many Hispanic. I don't recall. Muslim and Christians from living right my next door neighbors. We got no problems. Everybody seems to get along okay. Now, I'm not friends with everybody because I don't know them, because in America today, you don't get to know your neighbors like the old days in the old neighborhoods. But everybody seems to get along. Doesn't seem to be anything going on. No problems with that. It doesn't devalue my house, and it doesn't devalue their house to have me there. It doesn't devalue my house to have them there. Everything is hunky-dory. So my whole life has been in racially diverse areas. So no matter how I interpret today's message, I can't get away from this truth. I interpret it based on my experiences. Well, yeah, I do listen to the TV, meaning I process. I read more than you want to know. I read books on this stuff. I've read so many books on these topics that blow your mind. Some of them are valuable, some of them are not. But I've lived a good enough life, meaning a diverse enough life with a lot of experience that I could read and take away from what's true and what's not true. What's coming at me from truth, what's coming at me from an agenda. And you learn how to process. So engage me with that thing. Now, if you know me at all, Injustice and racial injustice and racial oppression is just it bothers the heck out of me. I don't like it. I've always been on the side of the underdog. In sports, in friendships, I've befriended people that nobody else would befriend. Uh, I think a lot of it has to do with me being Jewish, half Jewish. You guys know that. I think a lot of it has to, when you're 10 years old and you go up to your friend's house and my mother, I'm Jewish, and tell everybody, because my mom was always talking to everybody. I would say, don't tell nobody, because I know it's going to cause problems. I'm 8 years old. I'm living in Kings Park, Long Island, and my friend Tim Foley, an Irish kid, his mother sees, it's that Jew who's not welcome in the house, and slams the door in my face. And I still talking about it. And I mention it once every couple of years. And it doesn't like I'm bothered. It's not triggering me, but it's in my memory bank. It's like, that's an experience. So I can understand if a black person got slammed into the door from a white person saying, get out of here, N-word or whatever. That stays with you. Doesn't mean your whole life is different. Doesn't mean you attack others or you hurt others. But man, it's in your mind. It makes you a little trepid. Makes you a little walking on eggshells. It happens. So I think being Jewish, being not 2,000 years ago, not 200 years ago, but 70 years ago when I was young, 30 years before, 30 years, and actually in the 60s, 20 years before, they put people that were my ancestors, my racial group, if you will, in ovens 20 years earlier. So today, that would be like the year 2000. They put my people in ovens. That's rough. My mother raised me to love everybody. Don't be prejudiced against black people, Phil. But those Germans, got to watch out for those Germans. I told her off one day when I was in my 30s, Ma, you got to stop that. Because I was in my 30s, I could let go. I could process that not all Germans are bad people. But she was a young woman. She was born 1930, so she was 11, 12 years old, 13 years old when this was going on over in Germany. What did that leave in her heart? What kind of mark did that leave in her? This stuff affects us, how we treat people. So, and she has her view from her experiences. We all do. And we're all not prejudiced per se, but prejudiced based on our own experiences, what we've lived. And therefore, we have to develop a worldview. That's why it's so important not listen and trust everybody, but listen to other people and ask them, what's your experience? I talked to a black lady from my church when I was at Cross Point, and she was in charge of women's ministry, a lovely woman, black lady. I put her in charge of women's ministries. And if you knew anything about my pastorate there, I always had different races, different people at different positions purposefully. And I said to her, this is when all the stuff was going on around 2015. It was just getting nasty out there with all the Black Lives Matter and all the riots and all that stuff. I said, tell me, I've heard that black people have this talk with their children. And the talk is, be careful about the cops because they're gonna hunt you down and kill you. Hunt you down. Not just kill you, hunt you down. I said, did you ever talk like that with your children? She goes, yeah, I did. Sweetest lady you ever met. I mean, it couldn't be nicer. I said, did you have an experience like that? I've been pulled over by cops twice in my life. Okay, maybe it could be one bad experience. She goes, a white cop pulled me over, was very gracious, said, don't do that again. She goes, it was a minor, she made the violation, like she turned at a red light or something like that. It wasn't a big deal. Cop pulled her over, said, don't do that again. A black cop pulled her over for a similar non-violent thing, and he reamed her out and was yelling and screaming at her and made her feel threatened. So the black cop threatened the black lady, the white cop. I'm not saying black cops are bad and white cops are good. I'm saying this lady's experience, that's all she had to go by, besides what people told her. And through that only experience that she had, she was telling her kids, cops are out to get you. That's a problem. I've had lots of run-ins with cops in my life. I've had guns pointed right to my nose when they thought I was armed, and I wasn't. I was in the old tight gym shorts we used to wear in the 70s, and a t-shirt. I weighed about 120. I probably weighed about 165 pounds, 6'2", long hair, believe it or not, thick, beautiful hair. And cop put a gun to my face, thought he got me for stealing a car, which I didn't steal. Thought I had a gun. Somebody reported me and all this stuff. I was nervous. I got pulled over by cops for speeding and traffic violations more times than I could count. Not recently, thank God. I'm getting better. I'm getting older. But when I was young, foot to the gas, gone. Always got pulled over. I almost never get pulled over with my regular car. It's always my classic cars. I'm in an old 65 convertible and the cops will pull. I said, I'm just airing out my carburetors off. So he goes, yeah, ticket. But one time I get on the Garden State Parkway. I'm going south. I get off an exit like 1 o'clock in the morning. I leave my friend's house, my friend Mike DiPiano, and I'm leaving his house. And he's on the Garden State, right off the Garden State. I get on the Garden State, and I'm no more than 100 feet from the toll booths. But I'm getting off. I'm on the right toll booth, but it's 1 in the morning. So what they do is they don't man the toll booths. The only 2 toll booths were the last 2 on the left. They're doing 70, 80 miles an hour going through the easy pass lanes and stuff like that. So they're just flying through. I cannot I'm driving a 66 Cadillac convertible, powder blue, white top, white interior. Oh, I'm the man, right? And I'm just doing one of these. I can't get over. So I pull up into the regular toll booth that's not manned, and I beat my horn because right next to the toll booth, they got the building where the cops sit and the toll booth collectors. I'm beeping the horn. I'm saying it's only 35 cents, guys. I should just went. But no, I want to do the right thing. Something hit me that day. I was probably not in my right mind or something. And I'm waiting. And all of a sudden I hear over the loudspeaker, what do you want? I said, well, I can't get down there. Physically, I'll get in an accident if I try to go over another 100, 200 feet when they're flying it that much. And he comes out and he puts his flashlight that blinded me. The cops have these flashlights that I don't know how many thousands of kilowatts and whatever. It was a black dude, and he was as wide as he is tall, like this. And he goes, what do you want? I said, dude, I just want to give you the money. I got $1 here. You could take the $1. I don't even need the change. I was not going to go through and not pay the toll. And he says, you want me to arrest you? I said, get the light out of my face, officer. Now we're in a standstill. I said, I'm not talking to you until you get the light out of my face because I can't see. I'll arrest you. I said, no, come on, take me to jail. Here's the keys to my car right here. Take me to jail. Finally says, just go. He treated me like dirt. He was mad. I don't know what he was mad about. Was it racial? I don't know. I'm just telling you, that's my experience. I think Bill Maher does this comedy routine, which he did this weekend. I don't know if it's true, but I know that. And he goes on, I don't know if this is true, but I know that this. I don't know if it's true that black cops don't like white guys, but I do know that day he was on my case. For what reason, I can't tell you. He didn't take my $1, though. That was pretty cool. Lincoln High School. Played baseball, good baseball player. We lived in a time where 40 cop cars a day are in front of my high school. There was race riots in my school, fights. When I say race riots, not thousands of people, but inside the school fights and cafeteria turning tables over and stuff. Being an athlete, I wore the blue jacket with the white leather sleeves, which is not leather, like vinyl. The athletic stuff. So I have responsibilities now. I got reputation. Blacks and whites. Everybody loved me because I'm a good ball player and I was a nice guy, a friendly guy. So now I'm trying to get involved with people. Stay away, don't do this, don't do that. I'm getting involved physically. Let's not do this stupid stuff. I'm talking to the white guys. Let the black athletes deal with the black people because we don't want to get involved with the others because it's gonna turn ugly. So we had to walk when I was a sophomore. We have a game at Lafayette High School, which is the big rival high school. And it's a madhouse with race problems between the Italians and the blacks. It's divided physically, the area. Black people live in one section, Italians in the other. I got about a 1.5 mile walk, and a 1.5 mile from Brooklyn is a long way, maybe 2 miles. I got a game against Lafayette. So I walk this black guy who was a friend of mine on the team. I walk him through the Italian area to get to the high school so nobody would touch him, put my body at risk because there's a good chance they're gonna do something. Nobody did, thank God. But here I was protecting a kid because he was black through an Italian neighborhood. So that's real stuff. I mean, that stuff really happened. Ironically, 2 years later when we're seniors, he stopped talking to me and he wouldn't talk to any white people anymore. I was so mad at him. I had resent for years that he dogged me. My mother loved him and his mother and talked to him at the baseball games. But because I was white, he wouldn't talk to me because he heard from friends, don't mess with whitey and white people and this. But I'm older now, right? I'm different, meaning I'm still upset that he did what he did. He just passed away recently, so I can never reconcile that. But in my heart, I can reconcile my feelings. Who knows what he was? I had to walk him through those neighborhoods. Who knows if he just didn't say, that's it, all white people are this way. I don't know. But that's real stuff. That's the life, the area I grew up in. I'm at a hot dog place. You guys know Nathan's hot dogs and French fries. Well, there was a guy who his father was partners with the Nathan's guy in the beginning. They broke up. It was his brother. They opened up a place near me called Big Daddy's. Big Daddy's was in like a Nathan's. It's like an indoor, maybe 10 seats, and outdoors, lots of seats. So I go one night, we're hanging out. I had my Italian friends and I had my Jewish friends. I'm hanging out with the Jewish friends. It's like a Saturday night. 8, 9 o'clock, we're hanging out watching a ball game, eating hot dogs and French fries, no worry about my sugar levels. It was awesome. I could have as many hot dogs as I want, 17 years old, and the Italian kids come in. And they're breaking chops on the Jewish kids, and the Jewish kids won't defend themselves. They're taking it. I'm getting angrier and angrier. The way Jewish people were raised in Brooklyn was just take it. Get beat up, don't fight back. And I'm like, man, what's wrong with you? So the Italian kid tells, Let's throw them a beating, but leave Phil alone. He's one of us. They didn't know I was Jewish because my last name was Delarney, which is certainly not Jewish, but my mother's name was Grossman, which is Jewish. And so they took a swing or two, and I jumped in. I think I might have explained this a couple weeks ago. I got cold cocked from behind. Guy knocked me silly. What a black eye had because he hit me from behind with a good shot. And I got so mad at these Jewish kids saying, why wouldn't nobody get up but me? That was my life. That's part of my life, not all of it by any means. That just goes into the data bank. Grace Fellowship Church, my first church. I'm a Christian, brand new Christian. I go to Sunday school, and we're studying Exodus, and they don't know I'm Jewish. It's not something you walk in and say, by the way, I'm a Jew. You're Phil Delarney, married to Sue, got a kid at the time. That's it. I'm not walking around giving my racial identity. Did I have 2 kids? Danny. We had Danny. We had 2 kids then. My apology. And we're in Sunday school, and this one lady says 2 or 3 weeks in a row, talking about Moses and the Jewish people, probably when they were complaining in the desert, whatever it was. She goes, well, you know the way those Jews are. Christian church. Second week, you know the way those Jews are. Third week. I said, no, Carol. Tell me, how are those Jews? What about them? She goes, what would you know? I said, well, I'm Jewish. The blood drained out of her face. Nice lady, by the way. I never had any problem with her after that. It was no problem. Because I'm older now. I'm like 32 at the time, 33. She's speaking out of ignorance. You know the way those Jews are. So black people, they have faced the same thing. Now, she could say that in front of me because she doesn't know I'm Jewish because I'm white. And she's white. A black person, what's going to happen most likely if you have those same thoughts, the way black people are, you're going to say that when they're not around because you obviously know that they're black. You don't want to say it in front of them, right? So people are going to talk like that. So it's hard to, I tell black, when I talk to blacks just like I talk to whites, I have no problem telling people straight out what the deal is. I said, you think you got it bad that people talk behind your back? I get people talking in front of me, they don't know who I am. And they tell me their prejudices without even knowing it. Promise Keepers. I was part of you guys know what Promise Keepers is? A men's group, Christian men's group, really amazing. And I was an ambassador for them to other churches. And one of the things of the 7 promises was racial reconciliation. So I decided, and this has always been, this is since I'm a kid now, right? I'm just going right through my adulthood. I'm going to go to a black church, and we're going to get out with 2 churches together and do things together. And I get this man who's I guess an elder at the church. And we're talking, his wife came out with us at a church function we had, never invited us to his church stuff. They came over our house once for dinner. I met him once or twice for coffee and stuff like that. And after 6 months, I said, hey, when are we going to, you're in my world. When am I going to go in your world? And he kind of put his head down sheepishly. I said, what's up? He goes, it's not going to happen. I said, why? Did I do something wrong? Did I say something? Because I speak bluntly, and that could, not that it should turn them off, but it could offend people when you speak. Even the way I'm speaking now, there are going to be people who hear what I say he's racist. Just because you're speaking about it, they get upset. But I'm not. But I don't mind. I can speak about it. I said, what's up? He goes, well, I've told my elder board that we want to do some stuff. They said, never going to happen because you're white. Their pastor was named Buster Soares, who was a big, in black churches, they're more likely to be involved politically than white churches. And he was in New Jersey, like the biggest pastor. He was like, the big guy in New Jersey. It was a big church, Lincoln Park Baptist, I think it was called. And I said, did you tell Buster about this? Because I'll talk to Buster about it. I have no problem walking into your pastor's office. Because I told him he agrees. I go, you're kidding me. Good thing I was young then, because at 65, I'd walk in, tell the newspapers and all that other stuff. But I was like, you're kidding me. So we never got together because I was white. The elder board would not want to speak with me and talk with me. And I would hear them out. What have you experienced? Not going to happen. Cross Point Church. Well, it was called First Baptist when I got there. One of my goals, and you guys, I've talked about this before, was to racially integrate the church. Why? I wasn't going to bust people in from Arkansas. We had a neighborhood that was racially integrated. So therefore, I want to look like the neighborhood. I'd go out and hand out things for our church, like for the Family Fest. And if I handed out to a black person, I stopped and I talked. I said, here's my goal, because a black person always asks me this question. How many black people are in your church? They all do. All of them. 98%. How many black people? I tell them none, but I need it. So we need some early adapters. We need some early adapters in the church. Could you be the early adapter? You got some, because if you'd like to see the church integrate, would you be somebody to help me out and tell me, because I'm failing at this. I need somebody to help me learn how to teach me how to reach out to black people. I'm failing. Also, I'll think about it. Not one ever took me up on it. Matter of fact, the first one ever come was that lady who came with her husband. Oh, by the way, that lady who had those two experiences. I said, what about your husband? She goes, he's never been pulled over by a cop before in his whole life. And yet you're having talks with your children about every cop is out to hunt you down? Now, I find that disgusting. On the other hand, I feel sorry for the fear that these people have that would talk to their children about something that they've never experienced. Either one of them. So when I tried to racially integrate the church, Cross Point, I did. At first it was Filipinos came. And Filipinos are a lot of Christians, so Catholic and Christian. So I guess they were more likely to come. Had some Spanish people come. And then finally, some black people came. One guy who was beginning a friendship with me, I love him. I still love him. He walked away from me, said I was a racist, that I'm a supporter of the Ku Klux Klan. 3 weeks before he told me that, 3 weeks, he told me in front of everybody and the students and all the men, we had a men's like barbecue thing. He said, you're the least racist person I know. 3 weeks later, I was a supporter of the Ku Klux Klan. Fear. That's all it is, fear. Fearful of something, some boogeyman. Fearful of something he heard. His grandfather had a problem with the KKK in Tennessee, and that'll stay with you. And if I'm him, I wouldn't be worried about the KKK today, but if I lived maybe in the woods of Tennessee, I might be. If I'm black. If I'm living over here in Canton, I don't think I'm really worried about that. Then again, on the other hand, I might be worried about, in the church, we started having guns in the church because we were under threats of homosexuals and things of that nature, groups that were going to come into the church. If I'm in the middle of the woods in Tennessee, I'm probably not worried about that. But in Canton, I was. So depending on your context, you change what you think. I went down to a pastors conference. They called me from the Urban Alternative, Tony Evans Church. He has a side pastors group. They wanted me to be part of it. Tony Evans is like a Christian hero of mine, if you want to call it that. I think he's the best teacher of the Bible in the whole world. Every time I hear him preach, I tell Sue the same thing. How am I doing the same thing that man is doing? It's not right. It's like me cooking Italian food, and then I sit down and eat my friend Vinny Del Ponte's Italian food. I shouldn't be doing the same thing that Vinny does. I shouldn't be doing what Tony Evans does because he's so unbelievable at what he does. So I go down to the pastors conference, and I'm one of the 2 white men there. And everybody comes up to me, these black guys, well, it was mostly men. There were some wives there. And the first question So what kind of church you have? Oh, it's an ex-Baptist church turned to a community church. No, no. How many black people in the church? Not a lot, but we're working towards it. I'm here, aren't I? Like, I'm part of this group. I've been supporting Tony Evans since I'm a brand new Christian. He was the first and still the only guy I really listened to a lot. To be honest with you, I don't listen anymore because I don't need to as much as I did when I was learning. He was the guy I went to. It was one or two guys. One guy was whiter than me. He had like red freckles. He had red hair, but it was like afro-y hair, but it was all red and short. And he was, I think because he was so light that he needed to defend his blackness a lot to show his street cred. He's a pastor. He's putting me down. He's like angry with me for being there. The last day when we're packing up to go to our hotels and leave, he has no ride to his hotel. I'm the only guy left. He missed the bus because I had to rent the car, but they missed the bus. I'm like, oh, God's so good. God is good all the time, even in these times. I said, I'll give you a lift. You could see his face was twisted and contorted. He did not want to go with me and sit in the same car with me, but he had no choice. So I took him to the hotel, laughing the whole way inside, just waiting for him to say thank you. Nothing. Got out of the car, walked away. That's in a pastor's conference, by the way. I told Tony Evans about it. He was so upset. Matter of fact, he came to a seminary that they was a Moody bought out in Plymouth, Moody Seminary, and he was speaking. So Sue and I went, and the guy who got me into the pastors group had Tony Evans come in and sit us down, apologize, and what can we do to make it right. I had just lost Danny after that, and so I wasn't in the mood for pastors conferences or anything else. Literally had just lost Danny a month earlier. So, but that goes on all over the place. That was part of the urban alternative. So no matter what you're doing, you have and the problem I have is I'm stubborn, I'm bullheaded, I'm persistent, and I keep attempting to do what just doesn't seem like it's ever going to get accomplished, to see everybody get along. Why don't I stop? Because really, the chances, it's like playing baseball knowing you're going to make out 9 out of 10 times. Why are you playing the game for? God doesn't call you to be a baseball player, Phil. You'd be better off shooting baskets. You're better at that, so to speak. But God does call you for reconciliation amongst all people. And whether you succeed or not is irrelevant. In God, He wants your heart to be pure. He wants you to persist when it gets tough. If it was easy, everybody would do it. It's hard. And someone else is going to get that success. If it ever changes, it'll be 50, 100, 500 years from now, maybe, I don't know. They'll get it, but I'll be part of that link, and God will let me know exactly what part I played, what little role I played in that type of stuff. Reconciliation of all types is important to God. You know what the Bible says? We have the ministry of reconciliation. Yeah, but I don't have a gift of singing. Don't sing. I don't have the gift of preaching. Don't preach. I don't have the gift of doing numbers and adding up the numbers. Don't do the numbers in the church. Walk away. Don't do something you can't do. But everybody has the ministry of reconciliation. That includes reconciling people with God. That includes reconciling people with each other. And in one context, subset, is racial reconciliation. You have that ministry whether you like it or not. I don't want to do it. Sorry. I don't know how you're going to live in heaven where it says all people from all tongues, all tribes, and all nations will be there. Are you going to, if they ever ask, how did you get involved in this ministry of reconciliation? What are you going to tell them? I was kind of uncomfortable. Didn't you trust God to give you the words and give you the success that He wanted you to have? No, it's too uncomfortable. The church has to get engaged. Without the church, we will never, ever learn how to love one another. We can't love one another without God behind it, because He is love and nobody else is. Nothing else is. He is love. God has to bless the endeavor. Is there white privilege in America? I hear that a lot. I hear the argument a lot. White privilege is defined as a societal privilege that benefits white people beyond what's commonly experienced by the non-white people under the same social, political, or economic circumstances. In other words, does a black kid growing up in Northville have more privilege than a white kid growing up in Northville? Not a white kid growing up in the mountains of West Virginia. I think it's pretty clear that the white kid has it worse off. But we'll say that that's not color, that's economics, and I think there's a lot of truth to that, right? But the two kids growing up next door neighbors, they play the same sport for the same high school. Is the white kid going to get more benefit than the black kid? Is it systemic? Is it part of the system we believe in or the system we live in? And also, white privilege, it says that white people may not recognize that they have it, which distinguishes it from other bias or prejudices, which you know about. So you can have white privilege. I don't believe this. According to the definition, you can have white privilege and not even know you're benefiting from it. So what I do is I ask people when I'm having these discussions or arguments, okay, I don't know about it. That's fair. If I don't know, I don't know. But you know, so you tell me what privilege I have. What privilege did I have growing up in the Tenement Project in Coney Island that a black kid growing up in Coney Island did not have? Tell me. I need to know. Well, your mother told you to go to college and their mother wasn't aware. Well, that's not racial privilege. That's Jewish mother privilege. A Jewish mother was God, education on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday was education, and then God. Education was everything. Now, Jewish people have by the way, Jewish people are the most educated people in the world. Now that's beginning to be Asian now. It's changing. But there's a reason for that. There's a context. Everywhere the Jews went, they were kicked out of every country they lived in. All over Europe, I'm talking about. And the Middle East. They were kicked out. The only thing they could take with them besides their suitcase of clothes and leave everything in the house, all the furniture, all the utensils, they got to leave. Imagine leaving your house with everything in it and going to another country, not another neighborhood, another country. But one thing they couldn't take from the Jewish people was what they learned, their education. So education today means you go into finance, you go into accounting. Back then, they knew how to add numbers. They knew how to work with jewelry. They knew how to work with certain crafts, which you needed an education to do. And no matter what country you went to, they needed people to do those type of things for them. So the Jews always were able to take care of themselves. Didn't mean they liked leaving their country, but they knew that they could get work and get a job. So they were trained that education was everything for them. But there's a reason for that. There's cultural affirmations of one's own worth, part of this thing. There's greater societal status, supposedly a white privilege. There's freedom to move, buy, work, play, and speak freely. So I'll always tell anybody, so tell me the freedom I have to move, buy, work, play, and speak that you don't have as a black person. I can make the case very easily, that actually black people have more freedom to speak than I do. If I say anything to this message, which I don't believe is racist in any way, shape, or manner, will be considered racist by some because I'm talking about the topic. You're not free to talk about it, but I am because I don't care. Well, I do care. I should take that back, but I don't care enough not to talk about it. Whereas a black person could say anything they want about white people all the time, make jokes. Now I'm seeing a new thing. About 15 years ago, my complaint was, how come there's no comedians that make fun of black people? But every black comedian, it's the same routine that black people are hip and cool and white people like, Poindexter and make fun of the way they talk and all that stuff. It's changing now. There are comedians that are white comedians making fun of black people. I'm like, thank God, because black people are easy to make fun of just as white people are. We all have our idiosyncrasies. We all have the way mothers, the old thing, a black mother is really tough on her kids. But I had a Jewish mother that beat me on a regular. I know all about it. It's not a black thing. And by the way, Asian people will tell you what they call helicopter, not the helicopter, tiger moms. Tiger moms, what they do to their kids, and they make them toe the line and succeed. Oh, it's not about black. It's not about white. Mothers who care about their children get tough on their children. Not only tough unreasonably, but they want them to do right, not go into drugs and drinking and women or guys or whatever it is. So I'm trying to give myself the freedom that I believe black people have, and we could talk and listen to one another. I have no problem talking. I have no problem listening. But when you make an accusation, I want you to back it up. You remember week 1, I said we need an honest conversation and a willingness for all skin tones to listen. I said, I admit that I have no idea what it's like to grow up black in America. How could I? I'm not black. But they hate when I say, you have no idea what it's like to grow up white in America. Or white Jewish in America. You have no idea. Or maybe we do have some idea if we're willing to say, oh, the stuff that I experience, this guy could have experienced too, in a different angle, through a different prejudice. But isn't it one of the same feelings that it drives in you? Makes you want to be better for your children? Because you can either be better for your kids or get bitter and separate. And we're going to talk about that, because that's not the solution in my eyes. I grew up in tenement projects. My junior high school in Florida was over 50% black. My high school was about 50% black. That was just the way it was. I had the advantage of being a baseball player. My freshman year in Cornell, I had a Dominican roommate. Now, a Dominican kid in Cornell in 1977 was rare. You go to Michigan today, it's the United Nations. Fine. Cornell was not in 1977. There was black kids. They had their own dormitory, their own special dorm called Ujima. And that was about black experiences and living together with blacks. You wonder why black people and whites still had a problem getting along? They were separate. And I'm not invited to the frat parties and the drinking parties and the beer parties because I wasn't black. So I took that out by hitting golf balls at their dormitory at night because I was an idiot. But I was an 18-year-old idiot. Oh, you're not going to invite me? Now I'm drinking with my friends. We're hitting golf balls towards them. It's not to be proud of that. But that's what happens when you separate. You cause division and resentments and anger and hatred. It's hard to live 18 knowing what you know at 65. That's a rare bird that has that kind of maturity. I was not that rare bird. I was the average bird. So my roommate, my Dominican roommate, who we were friends for years, I haven't talked to him in years now because he left after 1 year for school, and we stayed friends for a short time, but then he went to his own thing, got married, did his own thing, and we kind of lost contact. So I brought Sue over his house in Spanish Harlem. We had dinner over there. And I went up to visit Cornell with him in my car. I knew him from playing against him in high school. I knew of him. I didn't like him because I came in second in New York City for the Iron Horse Award for the best baseball player in New York City. He won it. Not as good as me. It's like every time you see a beautiful woman with a guy, you go, what's she doing with a dog like that when she could have me? How'd this guy get that? And I really thought that was true. And this guy got that award over me? What, are you crazy? But we got to be friends. I get a call one night, about 10 o'clock at night, 10:30 at night, from the coach at Cornell. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I thought maybe you were still outside doing your thing. I said, it's 10:30. I'm going to sleep. Like, what's up, coach? He goes, well, Louis and you came up for the visit. Louis, he really liked you. I said, I liked him too. He's a great guy. I was thinking I'd love to live with this guy because we got along so well. But I'm a freshman coach. I can't tell who I'm going to live with, right? Whatever it winds up, it winds up. He goes, Louis would like to room with you. Would that be okay with you? I said, definitely. I was like, I wasn't going to ask you. I was hoping that that's the way it worked out. And he goes, well, I wanted to make sure. I said, because he was worried that this white guy would not accept it, the Dominican kid. Not knowing me, he thought I was out there in the streets at night. My coach in college hated me, and he thought I was in the streets every night causing trouble. Seriously, he thought I was out like gangs in the streets. I got a Jewish mother. I was in no gangs in no streets. When she told you to come upstairs, you came upstairs. You listened. Not that I couldn't beat her up, but the thought of even lifting a hand this high, no, because then my father would have got involved. Raising my voice. I raised my voice many times to my mom, and you're crazy, Mom. We don't know nothing when we argue. But never raise my voice in that, you know what I'm talking about? In a threatening way. My father would have stepped in and would have been all over for me. And that's a good thing. Good thing. So here we had this thing in Cornell where the Spanish Dominican kid was worried about whether this white guy would be willing to live with him. I know I experienced a disadvantage for being white. I got to I told you this example. I'll say it again for the camera. I was 24 years old, married to Sue for a year or two. About a year or two, living in our first apartment. I decided I'm going to apply to business school. So in business school, you have to take what's called the GMATs. And the GMAT, you could send your scores to a certain amount of schools. So I picked out some New NYU, Pace University, local schools, because it was for free. You got like 3 to 5 schools for free. You don't got to spend. I get a letter about a month later. I finished in the top 9% of the country for my grade. Top 9%. That's pretty good. I'm not stupid. I get a letter from Harvard saying you finished in the top 1/10 of 1% of all black kids. Oh, I forgot to say, I filled out I was African American on the form. I resented the fact that I got to fill out my race. What does that have to do with anything? I was into this. This thing has been on my mind since I'm a little kid. So I put African American. First and only time I've ever done that. I get the letter. We're looking forward. You're accepted, full scholarship, Harvard University. We're looking forward to you coming for the orientation. I'm married. I live with my wife. I can't just say she's working. She's a CPA. Let's go to Boston. There's no plane rides where you could commute every day, especially back then. So I had to just ignore the letter. I wish I kept that letter. And if I was today, I would have sued. I would have told Sue we're moving, and they'll let me in that school whether they like it or not, because Harvard Business School, I was making like $25,000 a year, which is big money. I would have come out making 50 and 75 immediately, back 1983, 84. Wow. But I couldn't go because I wasn't black. So being white was at a disadvantage. They sent Harvard the grades automatically. I didn't ask them to send them there. They probably said, send us all the grades out in the top, whatever, 1% of the country for black people. I finished in the top 1/10 of 1%. Never went to Harvard Business School. But it was a good story. And a year later, they came out with that movie Soul Man with C. Thomas Howell. He's a white kid going to Harvard. He gets bad grades. His father says, I'm pulling all the funding away. He needs financial aid. Think we could do this movie today? He paints his face black and got all the financial aid, and was dating a girl named Rae Dawn Chung, I believe, in the movie. She was an actress. Still is, I believe, but was pretty big at the time. You couldn't make that movie today. It was funny. And I'm thinking, like, that was me. I could have painted my face black, and I would have got free Harvard. I couldn't live like that every day, but it would have been an interesting Saturday Night Live skit. That's a time for being white was at a disadvantage. Most white people really believe I said most, maybe not today. I'm really putting my context into it. White people are raised that the harder you work, the more you have an opportunity to be rewarded. Work hard, get rewarded. And I lived my life that way. Lived it. I hear from black people that talk about, they don't believe that at all, that the opportunities are decreasing. They have working hard means no difference to them. They have no advantage to working hard, which is really strange because you know how many black people are successful? Lots. Not one of them. Now, they may have had some advantage with affirmative action, but when they're in the job, if you're successful, you're working. Successful. Sue works for a black man. He's a successful businessman. Guy's always hustling. Always getting new businesses, buying and selling and doing and, trying new things out. He's hustling. He deserves everything he gets. I hope he always stays successful, for Sue's sake too, and for his sake, and his family's sake. Very nice. I only met the wife for 10 seconds, never met him, but from what I understand, and the kids that they adopted and stuff that they've done, really just gracious people, nice people. I hope they do everything that he wants. They're the most success. You don't do that from sitting around and complaining about another race. You got to go out and get your job. And white people were raised like that. Maybe not as much today, because I do know that the culture is not the same as it was, when I was growing up. I will admit this, though. In many ways, the opportunity for blacks and whites is decreasing, not increasing. And what I mean by that is, because of all the jobs that left this country over 50, 60 years, there's less pie to go around. The pie decreases. Now, there's other things you could do. There's other opportunities in the high-tech fields and things of that nature. But for going out, like, I didn't know anything about the car industry other than I love cars until I moved here. And people are telling me that they grew up here, people that are 70 and 80 now, worked at Ford, worked at GM, worked at Chrysler. They raised their children. They don't care if they did good in high school or not. The day that they needed a job, they walk into Ford and get a job, walk into Chrysler and get a job at union wages and make overtime and double time and holidays. And so there was plenty of people living in a not wealthy area of Wayne, Michigan, right around my old church, with their summer houses. Winter houses in Florida, snowbirds. Never heard of a snowbird until I moved here. They had their Winnebagos, their jet skis. Their husband and wife were working at Ford, making unbelievable money. No education, no particular skills they learned on the job. No educational skills, I should say. Those jobs are now going away, right? Because now, it used to be, when I first got here, the union worker was making $40, $50 an hour. Now they come out making $16 and $18 an hour, maybe $20 now. Because they reduced everything. Because they could get somebody from China to work for $5 an hour. And that's what's happening. So the pie is getting smaller. When the pie gets smaller and you keep importing millions of people legally and illegally to this country, and so the country used to be 250 million, now it's about 330, 350, who knows for sure, since people refuse to take the census. The pie is too small. And the good paying jobs, the manufacturing jobs, is really reduced. So people are fighting and accusing each other of racism and opportunity and white privilege and black privilege because there's a desperation for the smaller pie. The solution to that is not to give black people more than whites or white people more than blacks. The solution to past historical injustices is not current injustices against another group of people that had nothing to do with it. The issue is to grow the pie, make the pie bigger, get them jobs back, open up more factories here. Yeah, there'll be inflation. There will be. It's okay, inflation, as long as people are making more wages. I don't care what inflation is, as long as the income is going up with the prices. Even better yet, even more than the prices. We need more opportunity for more people so we can stop fighting, and we're fighting. And who's controlling the pie today? It's not Donald Trump. It's not, well, maybe the new Donald Trump. It's not the politicians, or I'm sorry, take that, scratch that. It's not the business people. It's the politicians that control the pie. The business people want to open up businesses. But if you're going to charge me $50 an hour and there's a guy across the ocean for $2 an hour, I'm going to go to Cambodia. And with shipping and everything else, it still saves a ton of money. So it's the politicians that allow those things to happen. Through their tax system, I hope he tariffs everybody up. 10% is not enough on China. 30%, 50%. Eventually, one of two things happens. You're going to pay more for your product from China, or the tariffs get so high that the manufacturers have to open up here and start building stuff here. Why? Because business people will say, well, that's too expensive now. I got to go here where it's actually cheaper to produce it here. That's what he's trying to do. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of making cars in China. Guess what? Sell them to the Chinese. Do you want to sell cars here? Make them here. That'd be my rule. Anything you sell here has got to be made here, unless it can't be. You know, if you want to buy, Chinese, whatever, some food or oil that only China has, obviously import it. But if we can make it here, make it here. We need the jobs. So the pie grows and people have less argument when the pie is growing. You want workers to get more wages? Very simple. Make more jobs and keep the amount of workers the same, and income goes up. Because employers aren't stupid. They're trying to get you $10 an hour. Nobody's applying. $15 an hour. A few are applying. $20 an hour. $30, whatever it takes, they're going to pay because they need to produce the stuff. But if there's 8 billion jobs and only 5 people going for them, or the reverse, there's 8 million people and only 5 jobs, guess what happens to the wages? They put an ad out in the paper and they're lined up around the block for $10 an hour. That's what it is. People got to live. We need a bigger pie. What's the solution to all this, besides all this political junk, is the church. I'm so sad that the church doesn't educate themselves on politics and economics, because it's part of your life. If we didn't have a government, meaning a lot of government, then you don't need to study the government. But since it rules your whole life, whether you like it or not, how fast you drive back home, the government rules that. Whether you're allowed to drive your particular car, the government rules that. What options you have on your car that raises the price, the government rules that. Safety devices, fogging devices, all that environmental stuff. Laura comes here, she has certain things she has to do, the government rules that. Your house, I get a notice in the thing, there's a little bulge in the cement on the sidewalk, you got to handle it. The government tells me. It's not even my sidewalk, but it's my responsibility. So I got to call some cement guy in for $600 and level it off or whatever, chop it up and redo it. The government. Everything you do, what products you could eat, what products you could smoke, the government tells you. How much you could drink, how much not, how fast whether you can make a left turn or a right turn, the government tells you. They run your life. Therefore, you should educate yourself on what's going on. Not that there should be no government, but educate yourself on that. The church needs to be the ones in the front talking about this stuff. Yeah, who you vote for matters. Is Donald Trump perfect? Far from it. But I will say one thing. He's the perfect guy for this country at this time. If the country ever straightens out, then, when I first came to Cross Point, which was First Baptist, they said, man, you're rough, Phil. You're so blunt. You're like a bull, like Trump's doing, just cutting this out, cutting that. We rearranged the whole budget in one meeting. Done. Ooh, people were leaving. They hated me. Got to do it. We had no choice. No choice. Same thing he's doing. Now, when the church changed, when things got less contentious, I had to change. And people tell me, you're a nicer guy now. You're more gentle now. I said, I'll tell you the truth, when I look in the mirror, I see the same guy, but I don't have to be as bullheaded. I'm not in Bible studies crying, sitting down crying and bawling because Sue's not there. She's back in Jersey, and I'm bawling, feeling lonely, attacked, unwanted, unappreciated, and unloved. Crying like a baby in a Bible study until two old men come and put their hands on me. Art McDonald and John Lowen put their hands on me and prayed with me right there in the middle of the room. And the reason why I was crying wasn't for the opposition. It was you get so mad that you're withholding your anger, and then it just comes out in tears. I wanted to yell, scream, kick back, punch, kick, whatever I got to do verbally, I'm talking about. But you try to withhold, you try to say the right things, and try to do it right. You try to make them see your side. It's tough. It's tough. Is there a hate crime epidemic? Let me give you, black people say that their children are going to be killed for being black. Black Lives Matter. We have whites who say blacks are on a rampage, running around in gangs to hunt or kill white people. Whites are being hunted for being white. Let's talk the real numbers of the FBI. When you look it up, are they perfect numbers? I doubt it, but they're numbers. And they're probably somewhat reasonably, because they can't be perfect because there's just too much stuff going on in this country. The last time I looked it up, there were about 60% whites in America, 57 to 60%, and blacks are about 13% of the country. There were a little bit over 10 million crimes committed last year. Of those 10 million crimes, 6,000 were bias crimes. What bias crimes mean is they were biased in the crime towards a particular race, religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity, physical or mental disability. That's all lumped in. About 6,000 crimes out of 10 million. Okay, that's just to give you a little bit like, okay, nobody's being hunted. 6,000 is 6,000 too many. 1,300 were personal attacks because of somebody's race. Out of 10 million crimes, 1,300 were bodily attacks. There were some more out of the 6,000 stealing bicycles and whatever, throwing eggs at houses, whatever. But 1,300 were personal bodily attacks against somebody for race. 60% were committed by whites. Well, that stands to reason since whites are about 60% of the population. 21% were committed by blacks, so they were disproportionately more likely to commit a crime against a white person than a white was against a black. But still, 21% of all the 1,300. So 260 of these crimes were committed by blacks, and 800 were committed by whites against somebody of another race, bodily attack. It's such a low, it's 0.01% of all crimes. And yet you hear a lot about it on the TV, don't you? It's not one of the coverage of Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and all. It's not 1/100% of all the coverage. You know that. You know that. Fear. You don't need the fear. All hate crimes are wrong. Meaning all crime is wrong. All crime because of somebody's race, ethnicity, disability, national origin, whatever, sexual orientation is wrong. Although I don't agree with every sexual orientation, quite clearly, that doesn't mean we have a right to physically assault. You're supposed to love your enemy. And loving them is not assaulting them. The number should be 0%. But I think we need to think with clear heads about this issue. On the average day, neither whites nor blacks are being harmed or killed because of the color of their skin. You know how you know that? They're still talking about 2015's crimes. Ferguson, Eric Gardner, the 3 or 4 of them that happened within like 6 months. We're still talking about it. That was 10 years ago, folks. That's a decade ago. Regardless of what the KKK says or BLM says, that's the truth of the matter. Is there equal opportunity in America in 2025? Another sticky situation. Whites say, I got to perform much better than a black person to get accepted to college, get a job offer, I get the promotion. Blacks say, I got to overcome more obstacles to be seen as equal in the workplace and learn to perform in an environment that is mostly white. Who's right? Is it possible they're both right? Is it possible that whites have to perform better because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and affirmative action and quotas? And on the other hand, black people are perceived in a certain way as not being capable, especially blacks, what they don't understand, because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because of affirmative action, because of quotas, then the natural thing is if you're a white person in the workplace to wonder, how'd that black guy get this job? Or black woman? Did they earn it? How dare you ask? You're racist. No, you're living under the system that's giving you these advantages. How can I not ask the question? It's a fair question. And it hurts the black people. Because they may be, I told Sue, my right now my favorite for, well, I hope J.D. Vance, if he's the guy I think he is, and he's an unbelievable speaker. God, he could out-debate Trump 1,000 to 1. But we need Trump now. But maybe in 4 years, Vance will be at the level, not only a great debater, but the personality we need. I'm hoping this guy, Donaldson from Florida, what's his first name?
Byron.
Huh? Byron Donaldson. I love this guy. He's black. Good. He could speak and he doesn't back down and he gives you facts and figures. He's not J.D. Vance as far as the quick-witted, but he's pretty quick-witted and he's very calm. He's not an angry black man. Right? Oh, that image. Oh, he goes after Bill. He doesn't go after Bill Maher. He just responds. And Bill Maher's like, well, I can't get through to you. Because he says, no, because you know I'm right. Because I'm giving you facts. I love him. I hope he's the guy. And then he could be president after 8 years of J.D. Vance. If there's a woman out there, well, the woman I like is my Jewish girl. I just love this girl, Bayuger. I don't know how that's a weird name. She's an American Jew. She's amazing. Beautiful, and she could speak, and she got the answers about stuff, but she's doing her own books and writing. She's not putting herself out there enough. You kind of got to need, to get voted in, you got to kind of need some public exposure. Is there equal opportunity? I go to University of Michigan. I'm amazed. What? Yeah, did you guys ever go to University of Michigan? Just go there during the summer, walk around, have Joe's Pizza. Black, Spanish, white, Asian, Middle Eastern. There ain't no white place. It's the United Nations all over again. And yet on TV, black people are demanding more spots. That it's too white. I'm like, too white? I feel like I'm the minority there when I go there. Maybe I'm not. But, I grew up in a 90% white thing. Now it's maybe, I don't know, 30, 40, 50%, whatever it is, it is. It's amazingly diverse. How much more diversity could you get? I think it's great. I loved in the Olympics about 10, 12 years ago, the men's gymnastic team won the gold. It was amazing. They had a white guy from Russia who became an American. A Russian became an American. A white guy, an Asian guy, a black guy,
Indian.
And an Indian dude. 5 guys won the whole gold. And I said, you know that they were put in there, that mix, because of the diversity. Come on. There's no chance that statistically that they'd be the best 5 you could get based on their differences. But they still won the gold. And that's a proud American moment, man, to see, look at that. Oh, no other country on earth could do that. Nothing. Nobody will ever have anything close to that. And yet we don't appreciate that. More people, black and white, and all the in-betweens, need to appreciate what they just witnessed there. That a diverse culture produced such a diverse group of people that were the best in the world. That's amazing. I think it's awesome. And I was proud. I was proud to watch it. If black people were to become their own nation, black people in America, they'd be the 15th wealthiest nation in the world. 13% of the people, so 40 million people became their own nation. They'd be the 15th wealthiest nation in the world. That's pretty darn good. Does that mean there's not issues in the black community, that there's more poverty per capita than the white community? Of course there is. Let's work on solving it. One thing is you got to stop doing the drugs. You got to get your fathers in the houses. I'm sorry, this is the truth. You need to get an education. You need to work hard. And not everybody who works hard is going to get the prize, but a lot will. And make it better. That's what my mother raised. Hey, listen, you're going to go get an education, Phil. You think I like my mother telling me that? I wanted to play ball and chase girls. And depending on what time of the day or night it was, chasing girls might have went over playing baseball. That's all I wanted to do. I want to get an education. I did because of her. She knew more than I did. My father, like, do what your mother tells you to do. My father, I love my dad, but he was old school, and he had a lot of flaws, a lot of faults. Some of them passed down to me, unfortunately, but he had a lot of faults. But one of the best things the best thing he ever did is my father. The best thing. When there was an argument with my mother and I, he'd come home from work, do what your mother tells you to do. Like I couldn't separate them. I tried. He was, do what your mother tells you to do. Even he knew that that Jewish girl was telling her son the right thing. Without a revival in the church, not outside the church, a revival in the church. You know, I've been reading about these revivals on college campuses for the last 2 or 3 years. Is it real? I don't know. I still don't know if it's real because I'm not there, right? Real meaning is it impacting lives. But I'll tell you what, watch the TV. There's a lot of young conservative people out there, family values, work values, hard work. I'm like, where'd all these kids come from? All of a sudden, they weren't there 5 years ago. Now they're popping up. I mean, Elon Musk has 21-year-olds, solving the federal government's financial problems that wouldn't even work for the government 5 years ago. Now they're going in and solving issues. Thankfully, we got these young people doing some good stuff. So maybe those revivals had something to do with something. I don't know. We know the political landscape is changing, and it's changing for the better because there's more black people. No, it's not that black people have to be Republican. But when Republicans only have 7% of the black vote, time, that's a problem. Now I think last election was like 15% black vote. That doubled what Trump got the first time. That's good. That's a diversity of thought. Black people all aren't the same. We always knew that, but at the end of the day on election day, they voted the same, mostly. When Obama won election, he got like 98% of the black vote. That's not diverse. You know what? He got 45% of the white vote. So 45% of the whites decided to vote for him. Only 2% of the blacks voted for whoever was Romney, whoever was running against him. Oh, McCain, the first time. 2%. That's not diverse enough. There's no now the diversity of thought is becoming, they're realizing, hey, thinking the old way is giving me, insanity. Keep doing the same thing over and over, expect different results. Not going to happen. Getting smart. That's good for race relations in this country. Trust me. The church, we've heard it's the most segregated time on a Sunday morning in our country. We were created in His image, told to spread that image throughout the earth. How could the church represent God more clearly by looking like only one portion of the rainbow of skin tones? How could it? Now, if you live in an all-white area, that's what it is. But if you live in a racially diverse area, how could you represent Christ in the community by only looking like one portion of that rainbow, one color of the rainbow? The church should better reflect the creation as we spread that image throughout the earth. Last thing I'll say, I spoke to a friend, Tony Keeling, very nice guy. Matter of fact, he helped me start this church. He was in my meetings when I started this church. He came the first week. You were here. A few of you might have been here. He came the first week or two. And he has his own church that he does. I asked him one day, 10 years ago now, I said, Tony, let me ask you a question, because I'm always into this black-white thing. I want to find that information. I already knew the answer. Tony, are black people more comfortable in white churches or white people more comfortable in black churches? I knew the answer was white people are more comfortable in black churches than blacks in white churches. He said, oh, no, blacks are more comfortable in white churches. I go, what? And then I realized his perspective, by the way, that doesn't mean his perspective was wrong. That was his perspective. My perspective was the totally opposite, that a white would be more comfortable with a black pastor than a black with a white pastor. He says, no. No. He goes, black people are more comfortable with white pastors than the other way around. Maybe I was building my own prejudices, being like, I don't care. Tony Evans wants to come to my church and preach. Take the pulpit. Let me sit down and have a slice of pizza and a Coca-Cola and listen to this man teach me. Love it. But not everybody feels the same way. And I hope that what's going on at Crosspoint, whatever that means, I don't know. I hope that Bobby is receiving open hearts and open minds to the teaching. If he's teaching good, if he's teaching the truth, I have no idea. I don't listen to anything. But he's black in a church that's 125 years old. never had a black pastor, never mind a black senior pastor. I hired him. I hope they're listening based on the word, not on anything else. And if he's doing a good job, great. If he's not doing a good job, they need to make different decisions, but not based on race, based on what's leaving the mouth. That would be good. So we got to focus on building our lives based on brotherhood. And the last thing I'll say is in Matthew 12:25, every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand. Let me say that again. Most people think that's Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln stole it from a guy named Jesus Christ. And I don't mean stole it. We think it's Lincoln, but no, it's actually Jesus. And that should give you a good pause about Lincoln. Every kingdom divided, we live in a kingdom, folks, divided against itself will be ruined. And every city or household, see these riots in the streets, divided against, every high school divided against itself will not stand. We have all this potential to do something wonderful. I hope that these messages in the last 4 weeks have just a little bit of positive in our hearts and our minds, and it might change the way you interact with people, especially not just with different races, but your own race, because that's when it comes out. I had a dear friend of mine who used the N-word. I was, dude, what's up with that? He got all sheepish. I said, dude, that's not acceptable. Good friend. Dear friend, I love him. About 10 minutes later, hey, Phil, I said, yo, what's up? I'm not saying his name because people know him. He goes, I'm really sorry. I said, I accept your apology, but it offended me for somebody else. I wasn't the one. If you would have said Hebe or Jew boy, not knowing I was Jewish, I would have maybe felt a little more offended by it. So it's okay to check your friends out of love, out of love. Amen? Amen. Let's read the blessing for today. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. Next week, we're going to start on Ephesians, and I promise you the messages will be shorter.